Brittany.
Give me 1 second. I have to get our executive producer.
Oh, okay. I see a gorgeous picture of her in the background too.
This was a gift for my birthday.
Aww.
Isn't it great?
Oh, that is fantastic. Hi, Mina.
I've been in the flesh.
You're her emotional support human. Okay.
I truly am. It is a distinction that I wear with honor, and I take that seriously.
Well, I'm excited to be here with you today. We are into our 3rd season, all right? And as a reminder to our listeners, we have evolved the E word, right? So if you haven't caught up on that, make sure you listen to our first episode of season 3, which talks about how we have redefined the E word. Yeah. And so with that, we're going to start our new approach to Edumania. That's what the E word stands for. And talk about something that has hit the news really recently. So you want me to kick it off, Brittany, or you want to kick it off?
I mean, you can kick it off. I have been looking at many a meme, all sorts of things, but please do tell.
Well, oh shoot, now I just blanked on the man's name. So the CEO of this company called Astronomer, which is like a B2B data company. What was his name again? I can't remember his name. All of a sudden I just blanked on his name. I want to say it's Brian, but anyway, we'll figure it out. Long story short is, right, he's a CEO, and he was
Andy Byron. That's his name.
Okay. Andy Byron, yes. So he was hanging out with a coworker at a Coldplay concert.
A few coworkers.
But in particular, had a special relationship with another coworker where they were, let's say, hugged
Nina
up.
and I will demonstrate. This is kind of
Nina and Brittany. And for those who are just listening, they were hugged up together at this event, and unfortunately,
prom. Your nice little prom pose.
That's true. That's a good example. And he's married, okay, and he's hugged up with this woman, a coworker. I believe she works in HR.
She is their chief people officer.
Okay. Yes. So the CEO and the chief people officer are hugged up at the concert amongst other coworkers, I guess. And the camera pans to them, and they're on the Jumbotron while hugged up. And so they're caught in the act. Right? And this created such a stir. And it brings up a lot of questions, right? Around leadership, because obviously we have 2 C-suite people engaged in inappropriate activity, specifically because, of being married, right? It's also being done in front of other coworkers, right? And now it is showcased in the world. And it just offers up a lot of questions around, relationships in the workplace, appropriate behavior for particularly senior leaders, and also what that fallout means. Like when you do get caught in such a public way, how does that affect the organizations that you work for, and also how they respond? So that's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. And so I guess I'm going to ask what may seem like a silly question. Mm-hmm. Do you think that he should have resigned? Why or why not?
So I think that CEOs are the face of an organization, even if it's a B2B organization that may not normally be in the spotlight. And so they represent the culture and the norms that we expect all employees to, adhere to some degree. Because his behavior resulted in such a negative spectacle for the organization, there definitely needed to be some sort of consequence to that. And because it has made the company more of a laughing stock, right? With all the memes you mentioned, and there are some hilarious ones, right? How do people now take the organization seriously if their top leader made the organization a spectacle in a way that's not even aligned with their brand and their mission?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think, yeah. So, I mean, I think we've made this point about virality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure as a CMO, as a marketer, we've heard companies say we want to go viral. But the challenge in that seems to be, one, you can't always control what you go viral for.
Right.
And two, once you go viral, what then? Do you have a product to point people to? Do you have some sort of exciting news? Like, what do you want people to do with the attention that they're giving you? And so this is to your point. Again, this is not what Astronomer wanted to go viral for. Do I think that he should have resigned? So I've worked with senior leaders, and many of the leaders that I've worked with have been of the mind that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually had some leaders say that if they observe other leaders cheating on their spouse, that is an indicator to them not to do business with that person, because they say if you can be disloyal to the person that you're ostensibly sleeping next to every night, or you've made this solemn vow to, how can I trust that you will then adhere to the contract that we have, the partnership that we're building? How can I trust you generally if I see that you're not even loyal to your family? And that's something that I've had to think about, because when I saw that, of course, it was embarrassing, and they made it worse because of their reaction to being on the kiss cam, right? He's ducking, she's quite literally hiding her face, turning around. You have another coworker who's kind of awkwardly staring at the kiss cam and laughing. But when I dug in, so this was a company-owned box, right? So when I thought about whether or not he should resign, my question was, okay, so how much of the business is personal and vice versa?
Mm-hmm.
And when you come in, like I've come into organizations and I've done these types of investigations when it comes to any potential harassment, nepotism, anything that has to do with these personal relationships impacting the workplace, it gets really, really tangled. So to see that the chief people officer and the CEO are having a relationship that doesn't seem like they disclose to anyone, certainly not the board, because again, they are the bosses, right? So who would they report to? They report to the board. But then, how much of company money is being spent on this box? Are we having company events just to facilitate this relationships? So both of their spouses, because she was married as well, so that both of their spouses can then say, "Oh, okay, you're just going to a work thing,"
Well,
and not cause suspicion. So I do think resigning is the right choice, and I mean he's already in another role, so it doesn't seem like it's impacted him too much. And I think as of a few days ago, the CPO, the chief people officer, she's also resigned. which ultimately I think is for the best, because huge loss. But I think they should have resigned. I mean, it's awkward. It's going, if it hasn't already, it should lead to a number of investigations into how things are being run at Astronomer and what matters to Astronomer.
I mean, you're right. And, you know, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about this in a couple different ways, right? So one is about people's personal relationships. And while some people may feel certain things are inappropriate, we don't have the full story. We don't know if, you know, they have open marriages. We don't know if their spouses are okay with it or not okay with it. They might not be okay with it when it becomes public like this, but there's a lot of things that we don't know about what happens with people personally. But to your point, you know, it gets really tangled when it's coworkers. And it's really tangled when you have the top dog, the chief people officer, that's entangled in these situations, because if something does go awry, that's the person that's supposed to, you know, the go-to person that's supposed to make sure that, you know, these policies or that things are appropriate in the workplace, right? And when that person is being inappropriate coupled with the CEO, that just is just not a good look. And so I agree, you know, I agree with everything that you said. I think sometimes I just get caught up in that, you know, the personal aspect of it. Like, just because we don't like what you do does not mean you can't do your work, right? Those things happen all the time, right? And I think it's because of the roles that this becomes even more complex. But when we also say you can bring your whole self to work, which I don't really like that phrase, right? What does that really mean? What are we really saying? Or are we saying, you know, just bring parts of yourself, just bring the worker bee parts of yourself, and leave the emotional aspects at the door? And then what are we saying? Right? So I just think there's just layers to this. I'm not defending this at all, because it probably would have kept going on had they not gotten caught on the Jumbotron. And like you said, there's probably layers. Like, how are they leveraging company time to facilitate this relationship in an inappropriate way? So all of that has to happen. But we also know that people do fall for each other at work all the time. When you spend 8 to 10 hours a day at work, that's your pool of people for the most part. And so those deeper relationships form. And how do you prevent that when humans are emotional beings? So I think it just gets really complex.
Yes.
In many different ways. And we have to learn how to temper that and manage those relationships appropriately. That will inevitably happen. It just gets worse the higher up you go.
Are you saying that the work wife, the work husband, the work spouse should then become the real spouse?
Listen, if you're already married, you're supposed to, like, you know, stay with your person. Or if you're in a committed relationship, you're supposed to stay with your person and not, you know, venture out. You know, at least that's my belief system, unless you have, you know, an arrangement. People have unique relationships. The work wife and the work husband is a unique relationship because, again, you're spending all this time with people and you get along with them, you're friends. Like, that phrase has come out of something. When does it cross the line? How does it cross the line? I don't know. If you take away the romantic part of any relationship in the workplace, right? You just like hanging out with so-and-so. And there's perks available at your company. You're usually going to want to explore those perks with the person that you like. So if there's a box seat, right? Hey, Kyle, right? I'm choosing that name because I watched Untamed last night on Netflix with Eric Bana, which, by the way, is a very good show. So, hey, Kyle. Right?
We are not being sponsored by Netflix, but we're
that show is really good. You know, the company's got a box at the Reds game, whatever, right? Let's go to that. And Kyle is like, cool, because they want to hang out with me, right? We're facilitating that relationship. It's just not romantic. But when it becomes romantic, then all of a sudden there might be a problem.
Yeah. So this is interesting because then it comes back to likability, which is so subjective. And most people do not have rigid enough boundaries that they can separate the personal and the professional. So it is a boon if you like someone and you work with them and you get along really, really well. That's the ideal.
Yeah.
There are also some people that you can work really well with together, but they may not be your favorite person.
Exactly.
And there are other people who are your favorite people, but you also know that the way that your two work styles don't align.
Yep.
We often conflate the two. So if you say, I like Kyle and I both watch Untamed. We had an amazing time talking about the show. I want Kyle on my team because I like our banter. That is not going to necessarily guarantee success. That does not take into account Kyle's capabilities, Kyle's skills, Kyle's work style, Kyle's dependability. We like Kyle. Right. This also reminds me of two things. First, I was having a conversation with a friend. We were talking about bridesmaids. And she said, you do not choose your bridesmaids based on who you're closest with. You choose your bridesmaids based on who's more likely to get work done. And it's like, it's very similar here, right? So, I've been part of weddings and, it's a stress test for the friendship, right? Sometimes people come out closer. Sometimes people, those friendships fracture and they never really repair because people didn't work well together. People were unreliable, all of these types of things. And then last week, I was actually working with a group of attorneys. And one of the attorneys, we were talking about developing a performance framework and how these attorneys can go forward and fairly assess how people are performing on their team. Because there has to be some sort of objective standard that you can use to apply to kind of the key behaviors that you're looking for a team. And so we're going through some of these behaviors within the framework. And an attorney said, but, I still need to know more about a person in order to be able to work with them. I want to know more about them. And I said, okay, so what does that mean? I said, oh, well, I need to know, if they have kids because, if they're going through a rough time or their children are sick, then, maybe I can give them a little bit more grace. And then I said, okay. But then if they don't have children, then that leads to, well, why don't you have children? Which could lead into sticky territory because if it's a medical issue, right, you're soliciting them to share private information, or you're making a value judgment. If they say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to have kids," right? Or if they say, "Oh, I have a dog," right, or my dog has special needs, and so the grace that you might have afforded a parent of a sick child, should you afford that to the parent of a special needs pet? So then you're adding in all of these factors, right, that complicate the relationship. Additionally, some people value privacy, right? I don't necessarily owe my coworkers a deep dive into my life outside of work. Some people agree with that. Some people disagree with that.
I agree with that.
Uh-huh.
You don't owe it. But I think for some people, it's natural to deliver that, to offer that up, because it's about building that connection beyond the work. And oftentimes, when you have a deeper connection while doing the work, you can become more productive. So I totally agree that, you shouldn't choose Kyle just because you like him, because you can like a lot of people.
Sure.
You should choose Kyle because you can work effectively with him. And the bonus is that you like Kyle, right? Because that could create a deeper, better, more productive working relationship when you're not annoyed with the person that you have to work with. Right? You know what I mean? And then when you develop that deeper relationship and you get to know people more personally, that allows you more room to support in many different ways. I think it has to do more with the mindset. So, it's and how you're going to use that information. So if that person who wants to know more is looking beyond the black and white concepts, right? And deeper into the person's spirit and what drives and motivates them, I think that's a positive. Again, it gets a little tricky in how that is applied. And that's why relationships in general are so complex, because it's not even just about the individual person. It's about the individual person and how they interact with with all the other different people individually and within groups. And those dynamics can shift and change. And you need a high level of emotional intelligence in order to manage all of that complexity.
Yeah. Which then goes back to these virtues, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you brought up a very critical part, which is you need a high level of emotional intelligence there. And we're still working on that when it comes to accurately assessing leadership potential.
Absolutely. And I think I have a high level of emotional intelligence, right? But it doesn't always kick in, right? 100% of the time. And I ask myself questions around how I'm perceiving or how I'm reacting to something. So, I have particular triggers for myself. Disrespect is a huge trigger for me. I have a hard time moving past that. And I take that very personally, right? And so that's something I have to be aware of because it may skew my reaction. I also like to reflect on the individual person and their particular style of work and of communication, because that may differ from my style. It may differ from the next person. But if I look at things with just a singular lens, I'm going to miss some very important cues that are going to enable this person to not only be productive, but also feel good about their productivity. Because I think there's the work and that's how you feel about the work. And so we all have to take a step back and understand the lens through which we are viewing the world. And again, those triggers and also the things that motivate me, but also do that individually for people and then reflect on, am I reacting to this particular situation based on my perception? Do I need to add in some other layers? Like background is important to some degree. The question of home is important. Did this person not get it done because there are things going on in their life right now? And I should be sensitive to that and help them solve for it, which requires a personal point of view, right? To understand that. Otherwise, I'm going to think that they're just not doing the work when there's maybe a very good reason. They can't do it. They don't understand it. They need some more guidance. They need a buddy. They like to work on their own, whatever the different things are.
Right.
So you have to be willing to do that work individually to get that person to the next point of success.
Absolutely. And I think there are different levels of accountability based on whether or not you're an individual contributor.
Yes.
Whether you're a team leader, whether you are, if you are in a silo. And I think this is also going back to the challenges versus the benefits of remote work, is asking how we can foster collaboration, trust, and connection within a virtual box. We know it's possible, right? Our friendship started via Zoom, right? But there's also something to be said for being able to connect with someone in person.
Yes.
Experience them, and all of the intangibles, right? The intuitive markers that we get anytime we encounter another human being. But I think this, again, is an invitation to assess what's important to you. If affiliation is important to you, if you need to be part of a team, what is it about that team that you enjoy? Do you enjoy being the person everyone can rely on? Are you motivating people? Are you, do you like a sense of power and control? And all of those things factor into these relationships. If I had to look at this CEO and CPO, I would definitely say, well, first, my question would be, did they know each other before she assumed the role? Because I believe, at least from what's publicly available, it looks like she assumed the role in November. So she hasn't even been there a year. Right? So this is either a whirlwind.
Love at first sight.
Love at first sight, right? It's a whirlwind romance, or it is something that is, maybe there was a prior connection, right?
Right.
That they were able to build on in this space. And I wanted to also give some space to Andy Byron's soon-to-be ex-wife, Megan Karen. Have you seen her statement?
No, I did not see her statement. What is it?
Okay, so I'm going to read this out to you, partly because, one, she released a statement on my birthday. So it was the gift that kept on giving. But I'm going to go paragraph by paragraph, and I would love your in real-time reaction.
Okay.
So, says, wife of Andrew Byron, for now.
Love it.
It has come to my attention, and apparently to the attention of half the internet, that my husband, Andrew Byron, has made certain ... choices. Public ones, under stadium lights, during a Coldplay concert, and venue not typically associated with infidelity, but here we are.
Okay.
Next.
What's her name again?
Megan.
Okay, Megan.
So, I should also note that she'd removed her husband's surname from her Facebook profile before she deleted her Facebook profile in the days following the concert. So this is attributed to her. We don't know for sure, but assuming it is, we're going to continue. Let me be perfectly clear. I am not issuing this statement in defense, nor in heartbreak. I am issuing it in power, in precision, in silk gloves and sharpened wit.
Oh.
Oh,
Megan. Okay. I don't know you, but I like you already.
For sure.
Put on my gloves, which are my boxing gloves. Because I'm getting ready to go.
Exactly. I will not be engaging in performative forgiveness, nor am I interested in the optics of grace. Grace is in quotes. What Andy has done is not just humiliating, it is banal, common. A man of ambition brought down by his own astonishing lack of imagination.
Mm, that's a diss to the woman, to the, what's her name again? People,
To the astronomer CPO, let me
yes.
see.
Call her CPO. That's a straight diss to the CPO.
Kristen Cabot.
Kristen. But okay, let me write down Kristen, Megan, and Andy. Gotcha.
Okay. I have retained counsel. I have reviewed holdings. I have reallocated what was once ours into what is now very cleanly mine.
Strike.
I am not spiraling. I am ascending.
Mm-hmm.
And while Andy may have quoted Coldplay in his statement, I will simply say, when the lights went out, I saw everything clearly.
Mm.
To those who expect tears, I don't cry for clowns. I schedule. I document. I rebuild.
Don't cry for clowns.
This is not revenge. It is refinement. And he will feel it in the silence that follows.
I wonder if Megan's a Cancer. Feels very cancery. Okay.
it feels very much aligned with our astrological sign. Again, if you are in the proverbial shell, Cancers, their sign is it's the crab.
Yeah.
If you're in the shell, fiercely defending.
She could be a Scorpio too.
Yeah.
Because it feels very, like, calculated. Yeah. She could be. Or Taurus.
Yeah.
We need to look up her birthday. Confirm.
Yeah. we need to do this. Megan, if you see this, please let us know.
I respect this statement, right? She's simply moving on. It sounds as if, obviously we don't know her, but it sounds as if she's not shocked by this behavior. This just may be the last straw, or she doesn't allow for any straws, right? Once you strike, you're out.
There's no straws. No straws available.
So either no straws or this is the last straw, but whatever it is, we're out of straws at this point in time. And she knows what her options are. And, she's moving forward. I would like to build a narrative around this that is completely, just my own in this story. Is that she was waiting for this moment to happen. She knew what inevitably happened. And she's already got her ducks in a row. And she's about to just collect her checks. And she was like, "Oh, you're busted. I get my moment
barrel,
right now."
just yes.
do activate. I would like that to be her story. I don't know if it is, but
what was it Maya Angelou who said, "When people show you who they are, believe them"?
Yes.
So I choose to believe that at some point in time she became aware of behaviors, because I am persuaded by the idea that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is someone who very clearly needed to be in the limelight, figuratively and literally, then
possibly, who knows? We'll never really know.
Needing change, we will not. But this is not uncommon, right? We've seen very public coworkers come together, right? Good Morning America correspondents, right? They were both married, had a long-standing affair, came together, and now, ironically, their exes are in a relationship.
I think that's what makes this so complex, right? It's generally accepted. It's just how you do it. And who knows what was happening before this Coldplay concert, if they were just having an affair or if they fell in love or were going to get married, if they had plans to do this in an appropriate way. We may never know the truth around that. It's just that they happen to get caught, right? And Megan may have.
Purposeful?
I don't
You
think
think he
I
did
don't
it on purpose?
intentionally get caught in this way. I think there's many different ways they could do it, but maybe, who knows? We don't know. But also with Megan, she could have had everything on speed dial, but I also think that when something like this happens so publicly and shames you, it activates a different part of your brain, right? Like, who knows? Maybe she would have been able to forgiven it. I don't know. But when this happens in this way, but I think the question for everybody, which speaks to the everything statement, is what are your values? What are your personal values? How do those personal values match to the company values? And I know for me, if I was privy to that behavior, it would upset me. It would change how I thought about the people, particularly in those roles, and the organizations. And that also says to me that you condone this type of behavior, which means you condone it throughout the organization. And this is probably not a place for me, because we know cultures differ everywhere. I'm not going to fit into certain cultures, and that's fine. And so this is indicative in this public display, because you're at a concert in a company box with coworkers,
Exactly.
of how you think about relationships.
Truly. And I mean, Kristen, especially as a people operations professional, right?
Yes.
So a little bit of background on her. She is married to Andrew Cabot. Do you know who Andrew Cabot is?
Andrew Cabot.
Andrew Cabot is CEO of Privateer Rome.
Mm.
So he was actually on an overseas trip in Japan when everything broke out. And so he was in Asia, they said, for a few weeks. He returned on that Saturday. So he was gone while everything went down. And so Kristen and Andrew got married in 2022 after her previous divorce was finalized. And, of course, that sent me wondering, okay, was she at another concert with Andrew? What happened there? And so a few months ago, they purchased a $2.2 million mansion in Rye, New Hampshire. And a source says that his family is now saying that they've been having marriage trouble for several months and that they were discussing separating. And the source says they think it's interesting because as of a month ago, they were saying how in love they are. So this could be Andrew's family hoping to save face, but Andrew is the descendant of the Cabot family, and they're part of America's elite class, also known as the Boston Brahmins. And, it's essentially a descriptor for Boston's elite families in New England. So she married very, very well when she married Andrew. And so,
as you talked about this, there's another layer to this,
Mm-hmm.
So Andy, he's in his new role. He'll be fine.
Yes.
Men cheating generally is accepted. Women doing it, it's a different.
Almost expected,
right? Women doing it has a different connotation and different consequences to it. So again, given her role as a chief people officer, question, will she be able to get a role like that again? And then the other question is, because she's the adulterer, who knows what her husband did or did not do? There could be so many other layers to that. But because she's an adulterer on face value right now, that creates some complexity for her should, her husband want to get a divorce. And so, I really hope, for her sake, although I don't know her, right? Because I don't know her. I don't hate any of these people, right? Like, whatever. I hope that Andy and her were actually in love, and Andy helps her like get back on her feet and takes care of her, because I really do feel like it's going to be a challenge for her to get that particular role again. she's going to have to do a career pivot, whereas Andy is already settled. So the risks are higher for different people. Maybe it wouldn't be so great if it wasn't that particular role. I don't know, but it's already a challenge. Or maybe she'll be okay. Maybe she'll have a nice settlement and divorce and keep it moving. But as people think about, not only their values, they have to think about not just the consequences for the company, because those can be many, but also for themselves. But if we pivot to the company for just a quick second, right? We saw the the video from Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, and for the listeners,
ex-wife of
the Coldplay,
yeah, right, exactly.
Which I had forgotten
was also cheated on.
Right, I had forgotten that for a second because I'm like, why Gwyneth? And I'm curious what you thought about the video, which for listeners who haven't seen it, Astronomer hired Gwyneth Paltrow, the actress Gwyneth Paltrow, to be their temporary spokesperson in light of this whole controversy. And she did like a quick, I think it's like a minute video, sort of on it. Sort of. I'm wondering what your thoughts were about it.
So I thought it was a stroke of genius, especially for people who are chronically online. To be able to take the attention, right? Because before this, I know I wasn't speaking about Astronomer. I don't think you were speaking about Astronomer. And so to be able to capitalize on this, to also kind of bring pop culture along, right? Because we all know when it comes to Chris and Gwyneth, they had a very famous relationship. Their children are famous. And so for her to weigh in on this, and you have this kind of breaking the fourth wall moment, but they were able to redirect the attention because Andy has kind of fallen to the wayside. Kristen, I'm so glad you brought up the difference in how women who are involved in public affairs have been treated and are continue to be treated, at least in the United States. All of that blowback. But now astronomers has been able to say, okay, this is an opportunity, right? No bad press. So while you're talking about Astronomer, let's get someone that we all know, an A-list celebrity. Immediately I'm thinking, oh, how much do they have to pay her to do that, right? What's in their budget for this? But they're able to have her explain who the company is, what they're used for, what their unique value prop is. And I think that was really cool. I don't know that it is going to move the needle in terms of acquiring new business. And so that's where my concern lies. But from I would say maybe a PR perspective, I think it was stroke of genius. Ultimately, when it comes time to, at the end of the fiscal year, to have that discussion.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, first of all, I think this is why marketing, corporate communications is so important. Sometimes organizations don't put enough emphasis or budget towards it. And so this is an example, even especially in B2B companies, right? Why those roles are clearly necessary. So I agree with you. I feel like it was really clever as a way to attempt to change the narrative and lean into some of the social media, savviness that B2B companies don't really often get to play into. And so I thought that was quite clever. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, I think it was a positive, interesting spin, kind of meet the moment where you're at. I saw some comments online like, why wouldn't they have, like say their board chair or somebody come in? I don't think that it would have had the same social media play had it been, someone within the company. Although from a different perspective, for future buyers, I think that is more important, having, someone from within the company make some sort of statement, or, however they wanted to spin that, because I don't believe that anyone's going to buy their services because Gwyneth Paltrow said so, right? So there's still a lot of work to do to regain that type of trust, because even for people who are looking for those types of services, if you Google that, that will always come up. It will always be some level of scandal. So how you handle that afterwards is really critical. And that's why I think that he had to resign, because it couldn't be a company that allowed that type of behavior and could build trust with future companies, because that was broken with the public. But they still have to continue building it. And I think the first step was definitely the resignation. The second step was definitely, how do we change the narrative? And the third step is going to be much more quieter in terms of, it's going to be within, to their audience base, to their prime audience base. They can't spend too much time, on social media with this stuff and zhuzh it up even more. It's not going to be good for their marketing. So it was clever. It was cute. It played into the moment. It probably cost them a lot of money. And hopefully it works. Hopefully.
Because with his resignation, I'm wondering if there's some sort of agreement that they agreed on to say, hey, we'll give you a golden parachute.
Yeah.
Goodbye. You have to exit 2 CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hire an executive search firm. I know that the COO is stepping up as interim, but there's going to be an executive search now for 2 roles.
Right.
And that's expensive.
Yeah. And all the conversations they're going to have internally, like you said, the investigations, maybe updating of their values and policies and procedures. It actually has caused a lot more work and distraction. But it has to be done, because you got to shore up your foundation and make sure people are still aligned with the mission and vision of the organization. So they'll get past it, right? Because they got rid of the problem, so it totally will. But, organizations have to be careful about how they deal with these types of situations, but also practical about what happens in the workplace. Now, this might be a case for remote work.
Yes. I think that's as good a case as any, right? If we're not in group sessions and there's no stroll around the office.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that our engagements are purposeful and on target.
Yes, exactly. So we'll see what happens going forward, if they're still in the news. I think they don't want to be, not in that way, but we'll see.
No. We'll keep an eye on it. But very interesting. It's a very interesting situation.
Moral of the story is, don't get caught if you're going to do dirt.
Don't get caught. Continue to lurk in the dark if that's what you were going to do. There's a kiss cam somewhere.
I'm going to be like a little gendered and be like, that's the moral of the story for men, and women don't do it. Because the consequences are completely different. The
consequences are completely different. Ask Kristen Cabot, who I have not seen anywhere. Ask Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, exactly.
Any of these women who were in very, very public situations and paid the cost,
Yeah.
right? To this day, Monica Lewinsky, I mean, I'm sure she's done great work. We don't know about that.
We only know her for one thing, which is really...
At this point, it's been decades of ridicule and laughter, and, you know.
Yeah, the consequences are vastly different. So we have to be careful. And, you know, I would just say that everyone needs to think about that. You could be caught up in a situation, and both parties in the relationship need to really think about how this affects one another, and be willing to pay the cost if should that happen. So good luck to Megan and Andy,
Yes,
and Kristen, everybody. Just good luck. You know, I don't want to vilify them in a way, because again, that's their business. But we'll see what happens, or maybe we won't.
I'm just hoping that your true love is not already perfect.
Exactly. Hey, Mina, how do we do?
She's pretty sure. I think she said we did a good job. Yeah. So
okay,
I'm proud of us.
All right. Well, we got to get feedback, and we love feedback from the listeners too on our new approach. So give it to us.
Let us know what you think.
All right, Brittany, until next time. Bye.